Hello, everybody, and this is a very quick overview of my personal experiences with influencer marketing. Today, I have pulled up just one slide, and I might go to a couple others from the Essentials of Social Media Marketing, Chapter 14 lecture slides. But this is really meant to be more of my experience as as a customer of influencers in the past. So if you are reading this chapter, you're going to see a lot of different examples provided throughout the slides. You're going to see all sorts of celebrities, things like people like DJ Khaled on Snapchat, um, things that he's done, things that people do, the steps. And then at the end, there's websites that you can use, all sorts of case studies, and other brands that have used it well. But the question that I get a lot from students is that they don't actually know anybody who has successfully pulled off an influencer marketing campaign. We hear this a lot and we see it a lot with larger brands, but how often is it actually used and how attainable is it for small business? If I own a restaurant that is just one location and it does really well, and I do pretty well for myself, is it a viable option for me to look at influencer marketing? And what's more, what what is influencer marketing in terms of the level of the influencer? On the slide that I have here, there are 5 different types of influencers that are described, and I actually really like this setup here because you have nano influencers, which is essentially just people like you and me, all the way up to mega influencers, which is a long list of celebrities that are out there today. And when you look at all these different levels in between, the reality is successful influencer marketing is available at any level. It's just that you may think of it as something else. If it is at a smaller level, you may think of it as something else at a larger level. Now, there are a lot of influencers out there on YouTube, Instagram, and TikTok specifically, but there are also influencers on Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn. There's also influencers on Snapchat and pretty much every social network that you can imagine. For me, though, my experience has been largely in these 3 tiers here. I have worked a little bit with micro influencers, although that was a little bit of it was kind of me just consulting on that one. But I have worked directly on campaigns with these 3 levels of influencers, mostly on TikTok and Instagram. Now, I did have an experience on Twitter with an influencer many years ago, back before influencer marketing was really a term. Although at that point, it was me, a student, an undergrad student, working with a very, very famous athlete at the same university that I was at. This is about 15 years ago. If you know my background, you could probably guess who that was and where that was. But this is the days before NIL, so um, there was no money exchanging hands, and even it was just the player helping out a student group on campus by promoting our content. Now, today, we look at influencer marketing as being essentially a form of advertising, a form of native advertising at that. And it has become very, very capitalistic. There are contracts. There are businesses that work with influencers. There are agents. There are all sorts of limitations. There are all the things that you could imagine that could be good old fashioned metaphorical red tape standing between you, the customer, and the influencer. The key is figuring out the level of influencer, what your goal is, and how to navigate the complex world of influencers um, without kind of damaging what it is, damaging your time and resources. So for me, In my experience, I have had one campaign with a 1 million follower plus influencer, a mega influencer. Won't use any names in this. This was a guy. He was on Instagram, and I was working with a business looking to help them get off the ground. It was a B2C company, and we wanted to work with him specifically because he had shown an interest in the product in the past, and he had said, "Hey, hit up my people. We will figure something out." At the time, I was just a consultant for the customer brand. Reached out to his business inquiries. A lot of influencers have business inquiries emails now, and started a conversation about what it would take for uh, a contract to get the influencer to do some things for us. And to be perfectly honest, it was pretty outrageous. The fees that they were charging, the numbers that they would not promise, and that they were very much just kind of working on their own schedule. And I was working with a pretty decent size company at the time. I mean, the brand page itself on Facebook had about 35,000 followers, and they were still somewhat regional. They weren't national, but this is one of the bigger names in Michigan that we were trying to get. And the deal with the mega influencer was that he would post an x number of posts. He was going to do he was going to do four. He was going to do two videos and two photos. He was not going to promise that he was going to give us a range that he would promote it within about a 90-day window. And he was then going to not promise any number of likes, comments, engagements at all, and he could not guarantee any new followers for us. And because this was on Instagram, we weren't trying to drive traffic to our website. We weren't even trying to drive new business. We just wanted to engage. We just wanted to boost our following. And we figured, okay, if we can show him, this influencer, enjoying our product, we can at least get some followers out of it. And then we can utilize that, do some retargeting with advertising, turn it into something more. Unfortunately for us, that we were trying to also figure out a good way to combine this with a new product launch. It was all e-commerce. It was all available, all sold online. And the problem was that he gave us a window that was almost entirely going to be after the product, like way after the product launch. And I wanted to synthesize the product launch with the postings from the influencer. The other thing that the influencer said that was kind of bad was that, well, first off, of course, we didn't have any editorial control over it, but he also said, he was going to give his honest opinions. And if he didn't like it, he was going to say so. And we didn't really feel like we knew he wasn't going to say anything bad about it because he had already made some purchases from us in the past and he already had really sworn by the products. But for him, and these are just consumer products, consumer electronics, for him, that must have been, it must be interesting being in control of that when you have a company that you've never worked with before coming to you, looking to you as an influencer to promote your content. And then the price was pretty outrageous. I mean, we were looking at 5 figures here. That's to more than 10 grand for the whole thing. And all things considered, if you compare that to a social media advertising buy or a Google ad buy, I can pretty much guarantee you that you're going to get more out of those social media or Google ads than you are from that influencer. We eventually signed the contract and went through with it because the business wanted him so badly. And we did get a nice chunk of new followers. We got about, I think it went from, on Instagram specifically, 18,000 to about 20,000. So it was a nice bump. But in terms of any sort of revenue, any sort of sales figures, anything, we didn't really see any difference. Again, we saw followers. And I do think long term, like 6 months plus, it eventually led to some of these people moving through the ADA funnel and eventually making a purchase. But it absolutely was not worth a 5-figure five figures and a lot of headaches in between. And that was really I mean, it was just not a good experience with the mega influencers. Meanwhile, in my experiences with people in the mid tier and the macro, it varies. Some people are very much, they believe that they are a mega influencer and that they live usually in the macro area between half mil and a mil. Um, but those people, again, mostly on Instagram, you know, they're trying, they believe that they are the best, and they will believe that they have all the leverage when they are dealing with you. But it's those mid-tier ones that can be really easy to work with, and some macro ones as well. This is where TikTok is interesting, because a lot of content creators on TikTok have amassed a huge following, a ton of engagements, and great monetization opportunities without really realizing it. And even if they do realize it, sometimes they don't really understand what that means. So as a result, you know, the one guy that we worked with who was a macro influencer that was really easy to work with, he had about 650,000 followers based out of Ohio. And it was for a beer company that I was working with. And he was very, very easy to work with. Just him. There was no lawyer, no nothing, no legal team, no contracts, no anything. It was just like, hey, yeah, you know, just ship me whatever the beer is, and I'll drink it, and I'll talk about it on my channel at some point over. And he also had to give us a pretty wide range over the next couple of months. It was pretty low investment for us. You know, we were going to pay him, but it was under $1,000, and we sent him a 6-pack, and he drank it or tried it. You know, Brett was very, very positive about it, and led to a really nice little spike for us in terms of our foot traffic at the brewery in the following couple of days. It was short term. You know, it wasn't, we definitely, if I had to estimate an official ROI, it was we definitely profited off of that between whatever the fee was for him and the shipping and the product that we sent down there. We definitely saw at least more than a couple $1,000s worth of beer sales as a result, and we were able to track that. I told them, I was like, hey, can you be sure to have your bartenders ask, and the brewers, like, have them ask them, like, hey, like, if there's somebody new coming in, ask them how they found out about this. And it was interesting because they got a lot of stories of people who drove hours because they saw this guy talk about the beer on his TikTok channel, and they're like, "Oh, I'm near there." And so they would hop in the car and they'd go and they'd try it out, and it was a peanut butter beer, and they thought it was amazing. Long term, I don't know what the lasting impact was, but I do know that that was worth it. And so, you know, that's two very different experiences in influencers. And the first influencer had about twice as many followers as the macro. He had about 1.3 million followers, but at the same time, the macro influencers who have not yet become really popular and really well known in terms of getting monetization opportunities, those are the people that are going to be a little bit easier to work with. Now, I personally really like working here in the mid tier. Micro, it has a time and a place. I think you can work with any of these, although nano and micro, you're going to have to mobilize a lot more than one influencer. But in the mid tier, if you can find somebody in that 200,000 follower range, again, there you're going to get some that have feels like they've set out to be influencers, that they have pursued content creation as a career. There's a lot of people I follow on Instagram right now that they left their careers to be full-time content creators, and they did this when they had like 20,000 followers. And I'm thinking, like, you must have had some really good deals come up here in order for you to just switch careers and take a chance like that. But when I think about the really successful mid-tier influencers, it's those that one are going to be easy to work with, and that, you know, there's not a lot of red tape between you and the deal. But then secondly, that they naturally fit in the influencer marketing for you. When it's a very overt sale and it's very much like, hey, this is an ad, this is thanks to our sponsors, here's a shirt. It immediately loses a lot of its luster, no matter who it is. But if they naturally work it into the flow of their regularly scheduled content, you're going to be in a really good position to reach some people that you would feel organic, even though you are technically going to be paying for it. If you're not paying for it, it's not influencer marketing, but by definition. But it really is an interesting um, dichotomy between those influencers that have fewer followers and those that have a lot more. Remember too, the number of followers that you can mobilize is really the key here. A mega influencer, like if you think about like Justin Bieber, right? He's got a bazillion followers on every channel. But how many? And he's got people that will like stand in line for days for him, right? The NFT thing with the bear was pretty crazy a couple years back, and but the really interesting thing for me is that, if he says, hey, you should check out this new business X and they're selling Y, if it doesn't directly resonate with his core target audience, it's going to fall flat. And that's kind of the name of the game. Is not only do you want to look at the number and like what it's like working with them, but you also need to make sure that your product directly resonates with their following. And I usually look at products that are adjacent to what they're already promoting and what they're already utilizing, because that's a good bet to work with them. If you want to take risk, if you want to go out on a tangent and try something else, you can. Just know it's there's a little bit more risk involved with that. But that's about it. I just wanted to share my personal experiences with influencer marketing, some good, some bad, and follow the slides from this chapter are really good in laying out all of this. They get a little bit more tactical. I tried to keep my experiences more strategic, more general. And so if you have any questions, or if you're interested in learning more about influencer marketing in terms of actually implementing it, please feel free to reach out. I'm happy to share any additional details, and other advice as well. So thanks for watching, and see you next time.